Welcome to Light It Up, a podcast about resilient women balancing motherhood, their careers, personal lives, and all of the challenges that come along with being a superwoman. Each week, you'll be motivated to take action to lead, inspire, transform, and empower. Now, here's your host, Dr. Aginah M. Good morning. Welcome to another episode of Light It Up. I am your host, Dr. Aginah M, and today I have the pleasure of having a very special guest on Light It Up. So a dear friend of mine, Mr. Kevin Jamal Salter, who is currently a vice president in the commercial bank division at JP Morgan Chase. He also is a resident of Chicago, and he lives here with his wife of 25 years and his two daughters. Kevin is a proud graduate of Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, and has a degree in business management. And he is also a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. I'd like to welcome Mr. Kevin Jamal Salter to a Light It Up podcast. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Aginah. It's a pleasure to see you.
Yes, likewise. So I know people are probably wondering, why do I bring men on Light It Up when this is supposed to be a podcast for women? But I like to think that there's always something that we can learn. There's information to be shared. And I asked you to come on today because the month of September is Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. And I recently learned that you had been diagnosed with prostate cancer. And of course, I was very surprised, but obviously glad that you are still here with us. And I wanted to bring you on because I think it's very important for us to have these conversations about some of the health disparities and challenges that we experience in the Black community, and particularly with Black men. So first, thank you for agreeing to come onto the podcast. So I guess I'll just start right away with asking, why did you say yes?
Well, just like you said, this is Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. But even with your audience, the key thing is that they have Black men in their lives, whether it's brothers, fathers, boyfriends, husbands, sons, and it's about making people aware because we all think that we are at some point immortal. Like we're not going to get sick. And, the point of being on here is to spread the word so we can make people aware that this is happening. And, and people who aren't familiar with the stats is that this is a very common cancer and it's actually more common in Black men. And there's a variety of reasons for that. But the goal here really is to spread the word, make people aware, get people to go to the doctor. We got to get past the fear of going to the doctor with fear that something's going wrong, because that's when you should go to the doctor. So you don't have to wait till the last minute and then try to, scramble to get treated. And that's why I'm here.
Thank you. One thing I want to, since you mentioned that about the fear of going to the doctor and typically in our community, Black women will go to the doctor, probably for anything. I don't want to say we're more in tune, but we're more likely to go to the doctor and keep up our regular, visits, et cetera. But with Black men, that's not necessarily the case. Why do you think that Black men don't typically, go in for those preventive measure, checkups, et cetera?
Yeah, I would say one is there is an inherent distrust of the medical system. I mean, we could go down a litany of stuff, whether it's the Tuskegee experiment or things like that, where there's a level of distrust. Some of us is like, we can't take the time. off work to go to the doctor. You know, we've got to go out there and, you know, take care of business. And the other thing is, in our stubbornness, if we're not sick, you know, why do we need to see the doctor? But the problem with illness is sometimes we don't know we're sick till it's too late.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got to break the habit. And there are health disparities depending on where you live. Getting to the doctor, quality care, benefits. Do you have a job that you've been blessed with having benefits? Or are you working a job where, you know, you just get paid and there are no benefits behind it? So there's a host of reasons, but, you know, it does impact us more.
Right, right. And even with, like you mentioned, even the level of benefits for that matter, you know, for those who are fortunate enough to have jobs where they do have health care, there's even a difference in terms of the level of care. Just speaking from my own experience, I've always had an HMO because I have dependents, you know, I have 3 children. When I was married, my husband at the time, he had a PPO, so it just balanced out. And I didn't realize, because we don't, you know, we go to the doctor for our routine visits, but we've been fortunate enough not to have any major incidents where the level or the type of insurance that we had made a difference. And it wasn't until actually in the winter when my son experienced an injury with sports, with school-related injury. And having an HMO, you would have thought that I came in without insurance because the treatment was totally different. Once they realized I had an HMO, I had to wait to get all of these different approvals, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so that really changed my way of thinking in terms of what type of insurance, you know, I should select for my family. So when you think about in our community, you know, if you're working, you're gainfully employed, but then you don't have the type of insurance, like you said, that will allow you to be able to go to the doctor as often or take the time off to do so.
Yeah.
So tell me about when you went to the doctor. Were you just going for a routine checkup, or walk us through your diagnosis?
So as we just described why Black men don't go to the doctor, I was one of those Black men. I didn't have any pains or issues or symptoms, but my job offered what they call medical reimbursement dollars if you go and get a physical every year. And, you know, part of that is, you know, the physical, a checklist to kind of see where you stand. And then it also lowers the cost of your benefits. So I was like, I need to take advantage of it. It's basically free money. So I've been going probably for the last 3 years, more than that, 4 or 5 years, faithfully going. And so I was up for my annual physical. I had to get it done before the year was out, and didn't think anything about it. I just thought I was going to go in there and get my blood pressure, make sure my heart was beating right, my eyesight and ears were good. And while I was doing the physical, because of my age, you know, once you get over 45, they want to start doing, you know, some of the, what they call a DRE, or a digital rectal exam, and start taking blood samples for prostate cancer and other things. So when they did that, the doctor was like, something didn't seem right. And in my mind, I just thought it was, you know, maybe I was tired or something like that. So I didn't pay much attention to it. And so he was like, I need to do some blood tests based on the exam. Something seemed a little off. Had no further thing from my mind that anything was wrong. So they did the blood test, and it was almost like they did the blood test and they were like, something is not right with your blood test. We want to send you to a urologist. And going to the urologist, and keep in mind, I'm still not thinking anything. I'm like, this is just some off, you know, maybe my diet was off or something like that. So going to the urologist, he looks at my blood test, and one of the parts of testing for prostate cancer is that you get a PSA. They take the PSA level, or was it the prostate specific antigen level? It's a score they give you, and they just want it, and it should be lower than 1. Mine had jumped to 4 something.
Wow.
So, and they were concerned about that because of my age.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so they, based on that, they wanted to do an MRI. And the MRI was just going to see if they saw any cloudy marks around my prostate. Still wasn't thinking anything about it. I thought, oh, do the test, and like, oh, we didn't see anything. Come out of there. And this is all within 2 weeks. All this is happening within a 2-week period. They come back and said, we want to do a biopsy. We saw some things in there that we weren't sure of. At that point, I started to think maybe something is not right, but I still, I was being positive. So they did the biopsy, and then the day before Thanksgiving last year, I get a call from the nurse, and I had to realize the doctors and nurses do this thing this is their job every day.
Right.
So sometimes their bedside manner isn't the best. So I just get a phone call and they say, hey, Mr. Salter, we just got your results back. You have cancer. And then from that point of the phone call, I couldn't hear a word she was saying. She must have talked for another 5 minutes. And I tell you, my mind shut down.
Mm-hmm.
I hung up the phone. I was at home by myself. About 20 minutes later, I called back. I'm like, I'm sorry. Could you just explain to me what you just said? They say, yeah, we looked at your biopsy and they take samples. They took 12 samples and 10 of them showed cancerous.
Wow.
So you have cancer. So my heart sank as I'm sitting in a chair by myself. My oldest daughter's at school down at Spelman. My wife's at work. My younger one's in high school. She's at school. And I'm just sitting there. I'm like, and it's the day before Thanksgiving. So they're all getting ready to come back home. So I'm sitting there and I'm processing, because it's hard to accept, because I don't have any symptoms. I don't get that. I don't understand. I don't think anything's wrong. But in talking to the doctor, like, hey, look, we saw that we'd like to, based on the age and kind of the number, because the percentages of the biopsies that were cancer, we'd like to treat it within a month. And with prostate cancer, you have 3 different choices. You can either do active surveillance if they feel like, well, maybe you don't need treatment. Maybe you can change your diet. Maybe we can kind of watch you, because it can be, for some people, it can be a slow moving cancer. Some people can be aggressive. But based on the number of biopsies it showed is cancerous, and then they do what they call a Gleason score based on the biopsy, the samples they take. And based on that, they were like, no, there are 4 stages. I was to stage 2. So they wanted to treat it right away. So that started a whole new set of thoughts for me. But my next step was like, how and what do I tell my family? So in a matter of like 2 weeks from going to a standard physical to finding out that you have cancer, my mind was shot. Really, I was a mess for a minute.
Yeah, I couldn't even imagine. So how did you, just from getting that news, and then like you said, it was the day before Thanksgiving. How did you share the news with your family? And then what steps did you take to try to cope with the news that you received?
I had to get myself ready because I wanted to be, my thing was, if I looked like I was shook, everybody else would be shook. So I had to almost be calm, but concerned. My first concern was telling my wife, who had lost both of her parents to cancer, her mother before we even had kids, before she was even 30, before my wife turned 30, and then her father some years later, where that would take her, to tell her that. My daughter was getting ready for finals, my college student getting ready for finals. I'm like, I can't tell her. I just said, I just can't tell her, because knowing her, she's just like her mother, it would shut down everything that she's trying. I need her to focus. I'm like, I'm gonna be good for a little while. I just need her to focus. So I decided not to tell my daughters until everybody was back together again. And then I called my mother, I called my parents and my sister, and told them all at the same time. And everybody was I could tell everybody was in shock. No one knew what to say. But I told them that, I'm confident that it's going to be okay. You know, in my mind, I had no idea if I was going to be okay, but I had to let them know I was going to be okay. Because I wouldn't have been able to focus if they were not there. I needed that support. So that was one of the toughest discussions I had, you know, telling my wife and watching her reaction and still trying to remain calm. I don't think I've ever had a discussion like that before, and I don't want to ever have it again.
Mm-hmm.
But she was tough. And you know my wife,
Yeah.
she's tough.
That's
She's
why
tough.
we're friends.
You Chicago women, I mean, you guys have a resolve that like, okay, I'm upset.
Mm-hmm.
My emotion gonna come out, but we're gonna win. We're gonna fight. And she's a fighter, so that helped me.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and then you had this weighing on you, and then you had, of course, you're trying to be strong for everybody else because, like you said, you needed them to be okay so
Right.
that you could get through. Um, how did that impact you going forward, though? Just the whole mental anguish and aspect. I don't want to use emotions because,
Right.
you know.
No, it was emotional because I didn't have any of the physical symptoms. The mental part of this was the hardest struggle. Even after the surgery, you still have doubts. Did they get it all? Is it coming back? What did I do wrong? Can I do anything? All those thoughts creep into your head, and you got to fight those voices, because I went through a point like I went through all my bills. I got to make sure all this stuff is paid off. My insurance is up to date. What am I doing? Make sure my stuff at work is together because I'm still working. I had to tell my manager who I report to. That's the only person I told at my job because I'm like, I didn't need that, but I had to keep focused. I'm dealing with clients, and in my mind, I could be in a meeting. I could think about, I got cancer. And you guys complaining about something right now at work. Mm-hmm. So the mental part is probably the toughest, but I will tell you that I had a great support group outside of my family. Mm-hmm. Once I got to the point where I could talk to someone about it, you find out more people have dealt with it. You find out people have advice for people at the stage I was in. One of my good friends, one of our friends is actually, his name is Dr. Courtney Hollowell. And if you ever do something else on prostate cancer or just urology, he's the chief of urology for Cook County.
Okay.
And I reached out to him and just kind of told him what was going on. And I'm expecting him to tell me what to do, all this stuff. And he just kind of listened to me, which caught me off guard because I think I wanted him to tell me what to do, but then I realized he knew it was my decision to make. And I guess he's been through this so many times. He walked me through the options to talk to a radiation oncologist because maybe I want, chemotherapy or radiation treatment versus, a prostatectomy where they take the prostate out of your body or active surveillance, like I told you. He asked me the questions and what was I feeling. And then he gave me a referral. He said, I don't know if you know, he gave me a referral to go to a group at Northwestern Hospital of men who are going through the process. And I went through and listened to a group, and I was like, this is not what I was the only brother in the room, and I was like, I just didn't feel it. But then I told him, he's like, I got another referral, and he introduced me to, I actually knew him, but not in this context, but Derek Young, who used to be on CBS News. And he went through the same battle maybe a year earlier. And I would tell you that outside of my family, I would not have made it through. And I still text Derek, and I tell people all the time, he took my hand and walked me through this process. And he didn't sugarcoat it. He told me his challenges, his struggles, what went right, when it didn't go right. And that's what my goal is to, even with this interview, is to be that person for other people, because there are guys, and I talk to my classmates from Morehouse and my friends my age, and like, go to the doctor. If you know someone in your family who's had prostate cancer, go to the doctor, because most likely you're going to get it. If you, but you can't be afraid to go. And so those things, that support helped me make it through, because I'm still in the midst of it. I mean, I just had surgery 7 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
It takes 5 years before they say you're even cancer free, you know? So, but my mental well-being, as you're saying, which has been the biggest challenge, has gotten better. It gets better each day. It gets better each day.
Good. I'm glad to hear that, because you definitely have to have a certain mindset, you know, to get through this. Um, I've had close friends who have battled with different forms of cancer, and just watching them, and you know, the different levels of support that they've had, that has helped them, you know, get through. So I think it's very important. Um, you know, I'm an advocate of counseling, support groups, etc. You know, I think, like you mentioned, you know, once you started talking about it, then you found that there were other people who have experienced it. And I think that's something also that's very important that I want, you know, us to try to get across to folks. We have to be more transparent and talk about some of the challenges, because you never know, you know, how it can help someone else, or how you can also be introduced to other people who may be able to help you when you're going through some type of challenge or difficulty. So as far as, you know, your process, I know you said you had surgery 7 months ago. So you're still, of course, dealing with this. And I think I only learned about it maybe a couple of months ago. I know you posted, so I was completely surprised. What, in terms of the studies that have been done, I don't know whether, I know there's research that's probably lacking with Black men as far as studies are concerned, related to prostate cancer. But what are your thoughts about the participation of Black men in research studies trying to figure out why Black men have a higher rate of maybe not surviving prostate cancer? Do you think it's important to participate in these studies? I know we talked about it, we touched on it earlier, just with the history of these studies in our community, you know. What are your thoughts about, I guess?
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I'll be honest again, Aginah. When they came to me while I'm in the doctor's office, like, "Hey, we'd like you to be part of the study," I want to tell them to get the hell out the room. Mm-hmm. I'm like, "This is a setup. This is a setup." And first of all, I'm already dealing with the fact that they've diagnosed me with cancer. And now you're coming here like, we'd love to get a copy, you know, see your reports, see your cells, and I was hesitant, and they were talking to me. And, you know, I knew that it happens to us as African American men, not as in the U.S., not around the world.
Right.
Black men in the United States, which tells you there's something in our culture in this country that has triggered this, you know. So then I realized, you know, after the fact, I talked to someone, and like, no, if just like this, if this conversation causes just one brother to go to the doctor and catch this early, or find out that they don't have it, you know, just for the peace of mind, you know, maybe it's in their family somewhere. They can go and say, "No, you don't see anything," or you can start, or find out, "Oh, we found it, we caught it early. Let's make some changes," you know. That's my goal. And I had to believe in this. I started doing research, and I talked to Derek, and he's like, "Yeah, we've got to do more." There's actually right before COVID hit, we were going to start going to. There's a group, support group for Black men prostate cancer, which I really want to be part of. But right now, we really can't go out, and then at that point, they weren't even allowing us in the hospital, you know, for things like that. But as this goes on and things clear up, I will definitely. I'm engaged in this for the rest of my life. So I believe that they truly want to find out, but I think they will ultimately find out it's a matter of racial and economic challenges, struggles, stress, you know, almost PTSD. you know, is causing us not to go to the doctor. The stressors of just, you know, just being a Black man that may trigger some things in our bodies, you know. And I don't know if they'll ever be able to quantify that, but I truly feel that. And because, like I said, most of the time, if it's in your family, you know, it doesn't leave, right?
Right. And I was just looking at something, you know, in terms of the percentage of Black men who participate in these research studies, it's fewer than 5%.
Yeah.
So, and you don't have any history of prostate cancer in your family?
No, I do. I found out after the fact.
Okay.
Because here's another thing in our culture. You know, we're so busy surviving, we don't have time to talk about what we've been through. It's almost like when you talk to your grandmothers in the South about what they went through, you almost had to pull it out of them because they're like, we don't have time to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, when I started talking about this, I was calling cousins. You know, I had a question like, you know, I remember my grandfather passed when I was a freshman in high school, but I never asked his medical history. So those are the things we got to have those discussions. You know, we got to have it. And I talk to my daughters now, you got to talk to your grandparents. I think about my grandparents who were deceased now. I spent a lot of time with them, but there's still questions I had to ask. I never got a chance to ask. So now I'm asking, like, I'll call my parents and like, okay, tell me what you're going through when you were my age and what would you do differently now to get to your age? So we've got to have those discussions because you'll find out there's a lot of stuff that with one question you find out, oh, like I have a younger brother. Mm-hmm. He will now know that he needs to go to get checked probably before he turned 40. Right. You know, they say 45, but if it's in your family, he's probably going to go early and maybe he can change diets or maybe there'll be different treatments then. But yeah, you got to have those discussions.
Absolutely. I mean, and to your point, because I know that there's, and I don't have it, is it normally when you're over 45 that you typically would get the screening?
Yeah, 45. No. And they're starting to move it up I think it's 50 and I think it's 45 for Black men.
Okay.
I think they're trying to move it up for Black men just because of the numbers, but you still got to get them into the doctor's office to do
Exactly. Because I know even, you know, like you mentioned, talking to your family about, you know, health history, because I go to the doctor every single year, you know, and I have like the standard, okay, I know my maternal grandmother had breast cancer. She passed away actually when my mom was 5 years old. Oh, wow. And that, like, I know that, you know, on my dad's side of the family, now, of course, as you know, he passed away, had a massive heart attack. Well, I don't know. His dad passed away when he was 68 years old. And someone asked me the other day, well, how did your grandfather die? And I'm like, you know what? I don't know. My father never mentioned it. I never asked because I'd never met him. I just knew that he had been sick. But because of that, I've been very, you know, adamant about when I go to the doctor, I may be one of those people who I'll list everything on both sides of the family. And I asked actually last year, after my father passed away, I was so, I was nervous, I have to admit, because even with heart disease and women, you know, that's a silent killer for women, right? And I told them, now I was 42. I had all sorts of tests done because for me, I know that I have I carry stress. Mm-hmm. So I started to do things differently, trying to change my diet, trying to exercise more, or just find ways to reduce the stress in my life, but also being cognizant that I need to make sure that whatever test I need to take, that I'm going to do that because we have that history. So it's very important to talk about these matters. I know you are raising money this month for prostate cancer. There's an organization, XeroCancerorg. Can you talk to us about that? How can we support? What can we do?
Well, XeroCancerorg is just the organization that the goal is zero cancer, to get rid of cancer. And so they offer you an opportunity to be a supporter, an advocate, or just provide information. So you could, there are people who create 5K races to raise money. You can do, like, I have a fundraiser on Facebook right now where you put a goal in. I have a goal for this month to raise $2,020 for 2020, which has been an awful year. But they just offer the resources that we need to get the word out, to provide research, to reach groups of people who normally who are not being reached. And so I was introduced to them as part of the kind of my research on organizations looking to treat and inform. And my key thing is inform, because the doctors are professionals. They know whether the surgery, the radiation, treatments, or even surveillance. But for people that had to know where to go, say, hey, wait a minute, do I fit the profile? What questions should I ask my family? What can I expect? What's what are the recovery from these surgeries? What are the things that should trigger me to look into it? That's the kind of thing I think is needed, because if the word gets out there, just like you talk about your benefits, we need to realize you have benefits, you use them all. We go in there thinking, oh, I'm just gonna go in there and I just get an appointment, get out of there. No, you're paying a nice little chunk of money.
Right.
Use all those resources, force them to use it, because that's not what people are doing. So that's why I chose XeroCancerorg to raise money from. And right now, they've just been very supportive, and I'm trying to figure out other ways that I can become more of an advocate, especially for Black men.
Mm-hmm. Something that you mentioned that just triggered a thought for me. Your recovery time, as far as the surgery, I'm assuming everything went fine for you as far as, recovery. And after your surgery, how many times do you have to go back to the doctor for checkups? How does that work?
So I tell people I'm still in recovery. The surgery was just one point. I was fortunate when they did the surgery, and I talked about the different treatments. I had the robotic prostatectomy, where they removed the prostate. And I was fortunate they told me that the cancer did not spread. So sometimes the cancer can leave the walls of the prostate and affect different parts of your body. And that's why it's key for people to get treated early. But also, the prostate is unique. It's a unique part of a man. It sits between, your bladder and your rectum, and it protects kind of the sperm fluid and the fluids that come out of your body, as well as help you manage your urine flow. Mm-hmm. So one of the most embarrassing challenges of it is that once you had the surgery, the first couple of weeks, you are walking around with the catheter on, because you have no control of how to urinate. Mm-hmm. And I was blessed. I had my support team. My sister came in from LA. My mother was in from Atlanta. My aunt was here from Milwaukee, and my wife and my dogs were here. So I didn't have to do anything, but they just made sure they took care of me. But it was embarrassing. Some points it was humiliating that I'm a grown man, and I got to sit here and some men, I think my recovery has been good, where some men go a year, 2 years with no control over the blood, wearing I guess basically adult diapers and shields. Even though my mother and my wife and them laugh, they're like, you complain about bladder control, give birth,
right?
But it is hard, because it challenges you as a man. There's also erectile dysfunction, because your body is rebooting. Mm-hmm. They basically body as part of your sexual process, and your body has to recover. My bladder had to reboot. I was, like I said, fortunate that the bladder recovery was relatively quick, but I still talk to guys who are still struggling. The incisions for the surgery go across, it's almost like a half moon across my midsection. So I've got these incisions that, for 3 months, I couldn't lift more than 15 pounds. They didn't really want me riding a bike, even up. I just got clearance maybe 2 months ago to ride a bike, mm-hmm. Just because everything is still kind of healing once you have a part of your body taken out. They do the first follow-up 3 months after your surgery just to check your blood level. So when I went to surgery, my PSA, when I talked about the score, was like a 4.5. After surgery, if the cancer is gone, your score should be below 1, almost 0, and mine was at 0. So that meant the cancer is not detectable. But I still have issues. Like I have to basically, as I wait for my body to heal. Like I can't sit for long periods of time unless I'm in a cushioned seat. Like I said, they didn't want me riding bikes. I haven't started, I lost weight. I'm just trying to get my routine to get to exercise. There's fatigue that hits you like a Mack truck. So there's a lot of different things that happens as part of that recovery. And even with so now I go to the doctor twice a year for the next 5 years for them to do the testing, just to make sure the cancer does not come back. Because as the doctor described it, he said it's almost like pulling weeds when they do the surgery. They hope they got everything out. There still could be a weed in there that they missed that could come back. So they need to check that, because there are some men whose scores start to go up again, meaning that the cancer they didn't get it all, or it possibly spread. And so they'll always watch. And that's why I said at the beginning, they don't consider it cancer-free until 5 years, even though I'm claiming it. Mm-hmm. So when you talked about you found out, it's because my wife convinced me to share my testimony. Mm-hmm. She said, you're trying to keep it within your family, and there are people who need to hear your story. When I got that result back saying that basically they didn't detect any cancer, instead of saying, okay, I got 4.5 more years of testing, she's like, no, you got a victory. So keep claiming your victory. So that's where, you saw that, and I put it out on Facebook. Mm-hmm. But the recovery is something else. I mean, like I said, there's still, I still have issues. Like I can't lift real heavy stuff yet, but my incisions are pretty much healed, but I still get pains. I don't know if there's scar tissue. So you still waiting for the body to fully come back. They said it takes about a year really to get everything back in order. So I just try to stay positive. I cut out red meat from my diet as soon as they told me that I had it. I was a big addict of Coca-Cola, and I haven't had a Coke in 9 months. I'm trying to cut out the sugars, because it is a diet change. Ideally, I would love to be a vegetarian. That's going to be hard for me. Yeah. If I'm going to be honest with you, but I have to be aware of what's going on in my body, because my body needs the fuel to heal. So.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and definitely our diets, I think, play a huge role, in some of the ailments that we have. So the diet change will certainly help. And I know that can be a challenge for so many of us. Yeah. You hear especially if you grew up in the South, you have family from the South, and they tell you, well, my grandma and them ate this, that, and the other.
Right.
But yeah, we definitely have to get the diet in order. Well, I am happy that you did share your story. So of course, I'm gonna give kudos to Romelia for encouraging you to share your story. I'm always
my Dora Milaje from the Black Panther. That tribe of female warriors. I had a strong Dora Milaje. So yeah, I think I said that right. I think that's what they were called.
And speaking of Black Panther, of course, even with Chadwick Boseman, when you think about for 4 years, he was diagnosed with colon cancer. Mm-hmm. And none of us knew. He never missed a beat. I mean, and just thinking about what you were saying, like when you were working, and just listening to other people, or just in general, hearing the complaints of other people, and then you knowing that this is a battle that, you're engaged in right now. And it just makes you, I think, reflect. And think about really what matters the most. And I know I've certainly tried to be more intentional in terms of paying attention to what people are saying, or even what they're not saying, if I kind of detect, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I hope that with this year, just with everything that we've experienced, I really hope that we can show more compassion to other people in terms of just trying to be more understanding and be more supportive of what other people are going through. I mean, like before we even got started with this, we talked about, you could complain, but then really, what is there to complain about? You know what I mean?
Right.
So, but I thank you for sharing, and I am hopeful that that some men will go out and make that appointment, get a screening.
Yeah, that is the goal. I mean, and if you talk to my friends, whether it's Morehouse or I'm from Madison, I'm from Wisconsin. My childhood friends, even here in Chicago, I'm telling people, go to the doctor, just for your well-being, just for your mental well-being and your physical well-being. Go to the doctor.
Yeah,
you got to get over that.
Yeah,
They
and
need you here for the long run. Your family, your loved ones need you here for the long run.
exactly, and we didn't really touch on that too much. I mean, I know you had your support system and they were strong for you as well, but I'm sure, it's been a struggle for them in terms of seeing you having to go through this as well.
Gina, I'm sure it's a whole nother episode of what the people who support you go through.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure Romeldi would make a great episode just by herself talking about that. So
maybe I could have both of you on together.
Okay.
You two are my favorite couple. So anywho, but I thank you so very much for spending a part of your day with me. And if you don't mind, I know I definitely mentioned that I wanted to share the information about XeroCancer.org. If it's okay, I'll add a link from your Facebook, your social media account, just in case people want to kind of check it out and make a contribution.
That'd be awesome. I appreciate it. And I appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you so much. And as we end today's episode of Light It Up, I always like to leave my guests with the following words to don't forget to continue to light it up and shine bright like a diamond.
All right, I'm gonna light it up.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me this week on Light It Up. Make sure you visit my website at www.lightituppodcast.com or www.aginahmuhammad.com. You can also find me on social media using the handle @LightItUpPodcast. If you like what you've heard, please be sure to hit the subscribe button so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, I'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or you can simply tell a friend about the show. Be sure to tune in every Tuesday for a new episode. Until next time, light it up and shine bright like a diamond.